Welcome back to the podcast. MDV and I, we are on to talk about, I have a variety of things I'd like to discuss, but mainly this last week, it's been a really busy week. It's been a lot going on in terms of the men's club. We are seeing exponential growth in terms of the Train Hard men's clubs, the amount of people that are coming on. This morning, we had a captain's call, and we have these every month. So we have weekly virtual Train Hard men's clubs calls that are available to any man who wants to just get pulled up. We also have once a month captain's calls, and these are a much different energy. The weekly calls are about just like good energy, getting good insight. These are more like blocking and tackling. We're talking about how do we improve the way that we're running these meetings? How do we improve the way that we're getting guys in a parking lot? What are you seeing? How are we going to grow this thing? Well, this morning, something that really dawned on me, and it actually happened on Saturday and then was reiterated today, was this idea of making concessions. And I think this is something that all of us listening to this podcast can reflect on. When you go out and you have a mission for your business, you have a mission for your family, you have a mission for whatever you're doing. There's a spirit that started off, whatever you're doing, you name the thing. Over time, it becomes very easy to make concessions on that standard that you set, right? And, Rogue Fitness is a really good example of this. I used to go, and when I would tour their factory, they would have like different quotes on the wall, and basically like the standard is the standard at all times, and it's unwavering. And I think what happens is if you start to make concessions or waver on that standard that you set out for in the beginning, it's very easy for that to go from 1 to 2 to 5 to 10. And in the beginning, it doesn't seem like a big deal. It's like, I guess in some way, it's kind of like nutrition and fitness.
It's exactly that. I have that written down right here. It's like,
it starts off like, today I'm just not going to do my burpees, right? And then all of a sudden it goes from that to, I'm going to have extra ice cream. And then it just kind of, once you make concessions, it just easily starts to become, what's the word, MDV?
The exceptions become the rule. You start to make so many exceptions to your standard that the exceptions become the standard. And I think the quote that Rogue Fitness had, I remember it. It's on their stairway. It says, what you allow in your presence becomes your standard.
What you allow in your presence becomes your standard. I remember seeing that on the stairway. You're absolutely right. And just be like, wow. And this morning we were talking to the captains, and I have a story from Saturday, but this morning I was talking to the captains about having children and other people at the men's club. And I'm a pretty I'd like to think I'm a pretty compassionate, kind of neutral on things. I try and look at it through different people's lenses, especially as I've gotten older and having different lived experiences. And I started thinking, dude, I'd love to have my son out there. I'd love to have whatever. But I've had to reflect on the fact that there's always going to be those things that come up. But what was the spirit originally? Originally, it was to get guys together to connect, to do something together hard, and then go grab coffee. And as soon as you start making concessions and allowing, young kids to show up or anything other than the original standard, it starts to change the dynamics. And if that's where you want to go, then just have a separate event. But what I'm telling myself is the Train Hard Men's Club is a Train Hard Men's Club. If I want to do something for kids, I'll do that separate, right? You know what I'm saying? Because then all of a sudden, where do you go? Where do you go from there?
Yeah. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing a workout with your kids. And you do it all the time. You work out with your son all the time. And we've been big proponents of this, or thinking about this for a while through some of the other things that we did. We were always thinking about hey, can we get the kids involved? It's really important. But then when we're reflecting on Train Hard Men's Club, even the name rings true, right? It's the Train Hard Men's Club. Yeah. And then if you start to make all these exceptions to that, there's nothing wrong with bringing your kids along, or if you're going to go to something with your wife and she's there, your girlfriend or whatever. But the spirit of these and the dynamic of these is to help men create brotherhood, and to help men have conversations that they might not be able to have with those people around, and to help find a due north, and to help them go back to those people and be better human beings and raise the standard there. And I think that it's powerful, because you could make a strong argument both ways. You could make a very strong argument why it's a great thing to have young kids involved, and a great thing to bring your spouses. And we've tossed this idea around behind closed doors many times before this call. And, the thing that I think that you said this morning before we even got on, it's like, man, if you keep making these concessions, then what are you even becoming anymore? You start to lose the core vision of what you wanted to do or where you started out. And this whole year in 2026, as we were planning for it, and as you said many times, we're going to be maniacally mission focused to the nth degree. And I do think that these things can be good, but I do think that they can also pull you away from the core mission and serving that core community that we started out trying to serve.
Yeah, and I think that goes for like almost anything. Like there's some like I'll give you another really, I mean, this is another good example. We fundraise heavily for pediatric cancer. It's a major core value of my family and we host the annual fundraiser. We fund for the care, not the cure. And that's just what we're funding. And are we saying we don't want to cure cancer? Dude, of course not. Well, of course we want to cure cancer. Of course. But the 501(c) that we fundraise through is about the care because that's where they've decided that's their focus because Jessie Reese, before she passed, that's what she wanted the mission to be. And it's like, Roger that, because you can't be everything to everybody. You got to be niche in terms of like, where are you going? And that's how you really try and make an impact. And there's other people that feel deeply connected to a cure. And that's great. But it's a similar, I mean, I'm again, we're talking similarities in terms of like, hey, you have your mission. It doesn't mean that these other missions are bad or better, worse, or indifferent. It just means that it wasn't the original intent that you started off with. And you have to be mindful of that,
Yeah, a lot of this rings true to me in terms of thinking about discipline, right? And I think that this is a conversation that could probably go into a conversation about discipline and understanding that, and you don't always have to stay locked into something because that's where you started. You should oftentimes take your head out of water and reflect and go, hey, are my goals still my goals? Are we still on the right path that we want to be on? And, to be honest with Train Hard Men's Club, you've been doing it for now close to 3 years in a parking lot in Los Gatos, but in a lot of ways, it's just getting started in the greater sense of, we've brought on 50 clubs this year. We have a training app that's doing a challenge for close to 3,000 men. We've got, a close to over 1,000 men training with us regularly. And we are serving this core community of people well at this point. Could we do more? Of course. Do we have more planned in the future? Yes. Is it the right time to now think about taking our focus off of the ball and go, can we serve these other communities better? I think that answer would probably be a no, right? I think we're still so early in our mission and so gaining a lot of momentum behind supporting men. But it also comes down to this idea of discipline. And when you set a goal and when you're going about executing on that goal, really you're the person who's responsible for holding your standard to that goal. And we're going through the shoulder to shoulder challenge right now. And many of the men that have elected to do that challenge are cutting out a crutch. They're cutting out something in their life that might not have been ruinous to them. It might not be taking them down. It might not be wrecking their lives, but it's something that they wanted to focus on to remove for 45 days and to have the discipline, whether or not it's, you're not going to eat past 8 p.m. or you're going to cut out the sweet desserts that you've been having, 5 days a week, or you're going to reduce the amount of alcohol or eliminate alcohol, whatever it is. If you start saying, well, it's my birthday today, so I think that I'm going to have a few slices of cake or a few glasses of wine, or, I didn't eat early enough today, so I'm really hungry late night and I'm going to start. That can turn into a time when you start to make all these concessions around your goal. And then you lose sight of the power of the goal and you start to go, well, it wasn't really that important that it's 8:30 or 8 o'clock. It's 8:30. It's still within the 8 o'clock hour, but then does it become 9? Does it become 10? And I think that this is a strong reminder for us as we're halfway through the shoulder to shoulder challenge too, that don't make concessions on your goals, or at least if you're going to make them really mindful and meaningful and reflect deeply before you do, because you could pull yourself off path.
For sure. So the concessions brings me to something. And we'll put that in the newsletter. I think that's going to be a good one for this week is talking about concessions. I'll get with Liz on that. But this Saturday, I'll share a little story with you. And this goes back to concessions and this goes back to the code, right? So if I'm going to I had a friend recently who got wrapped up in some stuff and went away for a little while, and he came back, and I started thinking about, if I live by a code and I'm here to pull men up through the Train Hard Men's Club, through what we're doing at Train Hard, and if I truly live by this code, then this code applies to all men. This code applies to the man who got off the path, went away for a while, and is back. Even though I might have preconceived background with this individual, I can maybe have whatever, I have chosen to abide by a code that I created for myself, which is that I feel drawn to the mission of supporting men and pulling them up. And you can't pick and choose when you do that, right? You can't just be selective on when you want to support guys. Like, you're either doing it or you're not. So this weekend, Saturday morning, it's 5:45, early. I'm in the parking lot. There's already probably, I don't know, 20 guys in the parking lot. So it wasn't like a big deal. This dude drives up and he comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" You know, because it's obviously odd at 5:45 to have 20 dudes in a parking lot. And I was like, "Hey, we're about to start a workout. You got to come. You got to come. Get out of your car. Come. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go." He's like, "Oh, I'm just looking for my hotel." And I don't know, something was a little odd with him, but at the same time, it's like, bro, that's the code that we decided we're going to be. Any guy. I mean, there's one or two homeless guys that live around where we're doing, and every week I offer them to work out and I offer them a coffee. Every week. It's just, eventually they're going to say yes. Maybe they're not. But anyways, so this guy, I'm like, "Bro, you got to come." So he pulls over and he comes and he's wearing a backpack and a crossbody. He started off, I'm like, ooh, I was like, okay, all right. Like, okay, all right. Hey,
Like a crossbody satchel
yeah,
type of
it's like,
deal?
yeah, like one that I would carry if I was concealed carry. Like, I
Okay.
was like, all right. I was like, okay, like, all right. And
Interesting
I'm just
start.
sitting there kind of watching this guy and I'm like, all right, hey. And I told myself as I'm inviting him, why is this guy driving through a parking lot at 5:45 in the morning looking for a hotel? Was he up all night tweaking? What was his deal, right? And he didn't look super shady, but he didn't look super not shady. He was just like kind of like neutral. But I told myself, if I decided to abide by a code and if I truly want to lift men up, then it has to be supporting across all of them. And maybe this was God's way of putting this man in front of us, and maybe we could change his life. And I have to look at it that way. We've had guys from all walks of life come out to the parking lot, but this guy, so the last 3 years, I've had many different men come to the parking lot. Some formerly in jail, some former gang members. It's always been cool though. Everybody's always been cool. This guy threw me off. And so he comes in, he's wearing a backpack and a crossbody, and he does the burpees and whatever. And he just sits in the corner. And he sits in the corner and he wouldn't take off his backpack and crossbody. And I'm like,
He
dude,
wore the gear the whole time during the
the whole
burpees?
time. And I'm like, I mean, I think maybe when we were doing burpees, he took off the crossbody, he just wore the backpack. But it was just weird, right? Like, it was an outlier of the norm, right? You're on the highway and something just throws you off. And it's like, why is this guy not working out with us? And why does he not want to take off his stuff? So anyways, it kind of threw off the energy a little bit. And this guy comes up to me. He's like, "Hey dude, like that guy, there's something odd about him." And then he just reaffirmed the way I was already feeling. So lo and behold, we finished the workout and I'm kind of like, kind of half keep my eye on him because I thought that he was going to try and steal somebody's stuff. That's what I thought he was going to do. I thought people leave out their wallets, their phones, because that's just the culture that we have. Like, I would never anticipate anybody to take anybody's stuff. And so because he had a backpack on, I just assumed. Well, at the end, he ends up talking to a bunch of guys. He says that he was in the military, former veteran, has PTSD. One of the guys who was former military thought that the story seemed a little bit fake or outlandish. That's not for me to judge one way or another. But nonetheless, he leaves and he doesn't steal anything. But it was a really good moment for me to kind of reflect on the mission of Train Hard Men's Club. And I'm glad that we invited him. Did he throw me off? Did he kind of hinder my workout a little bit? Maybe. But maybe that's exactly what that guy needed. He needed to see other men training hard, and maybe he'll come back again next week and maybe he'll take off his backpack and it won't be weird. But it just was a good reminder for me that even though it made me feel a little bit uncomfortable, if you decide to say, hey, you want to lift dudes up, you can't be selective just because they're wearing a backpack. But something threw me off,
Can I ask you a couple of questions about this?
Yeah.
So if you happen to be somewhere like with your family or with your daughter, would your evaluation of the situation have been different? Would you have handled that situation differently?
Yeah, I mean, if my kids were around, and there was a dude sitting there who just like looked kind of shady wearing a backpack and a crossbody, yeah, I would just leave the situation.
Mm.
The reality is there's 100
Yeah,
guys working out. So it's like from a threat perspective, I didn't feel being threatened. But I felt like he might steal my friend's stuff and that wasn't cool, you know?
mm. So another question would be like, if you had to go back and redo the interaction with this guy, knowing what you know now, which is an impossible thing to know in the future, but like you could learn a lesson from this. And I'm sure that there's people who are listening to this who might run a men's club and might be thinking about this. What would you say you could have done better in the situation? Would you ask a couple more questions? Would you ask them, hey, have you worked out recently? Or like, what are you doing in town? No, you would have just rock and rolled.
No, I think I would have done the same thing. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to make is that like come one, come all, right? Like because I'll give you an example. Let's just say this guy, I do think something was off for
Mm.
sure, but it wasn't off immediately, but it became very abundantly clear something was off and other men picked up on it. Like, hey dude, watch out for that guy. Something's off. And, but MDV, that is the man who might get his life changed. Like, dude, there's quite a few guys who show up to his club. Full transparency, there's quite a few who I know have a very difficult past. And I know that when they show up, they're right on the fringe of not wanting to come, or maybe some friend dragged them in and they're hesitant. And then all of a sudden we're welcoming, we're supportive, and that right there, boom, could change their life.
Mm.
And so if this, I wouldn't do anything different, but it was, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I think that there's probably, I mean, obviously you're standing in a parking lot with 100 other guys, maybe the threat level isn't super high. You probably would have read more into the situation if there was a bigger threat, if he had acted a little bit more aggressively or differently or done something more weird, maybe the situation changes. But I think that there's also something to be said here about like your gut was telling you something, right? Like, and in those situations, maybe one or two clarifying questions and you get a little bit more information. Maybe it doesn't change anything. Maybe he just says, hey, I was out a little bit too late last night and had a couple too many drinks and I'm looking for my hotel. And with that information, you go, okay, cool. Like drink some water, do some burpees and sit out the rest of the time.
dude, I know. It just, I guess the reason why I want to bring it up on this show is that the lesson I learned as I'm literally thinking this as I'm watching this guy in the corner. I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, you're kind of impacting my workout, like in a little bit, because I kind of got to watch you, but I wouldn't change it because what if that guy is exactly what he needed?
For
Like,
sure.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that as the men's club grows, we are going to continue to see guys who have done bad things, who've done good things, who have been good people, bad people, but like, but if you had an opportunity to potentially change somebody's lives, like I have personally been told now at the men's club that we have changed men's lives. Like not like, oh, you've kind of helped me. It's like, no. This club has changed my life. It's like, shit, dude. All right, let's go.
I think if you take the safety element out of this, let's remove the safety element. Let's remove any thought that this guy might be carrying a concealed weapon.
Sure.
Let's remove any of that, right? I think when we remove that, and if you kind of harken back to the days when you were coaching classes and you think about this all the time, right? You never know what somebody's going through, or you never know where somebody had come from, or why they're showing up late that day, or why they might be in a bad mood that day. Even people who you've had hundreds and hundreds of interactions with, and it's so important in those moments to take a step back and not allow yourself to make that quick judgment to say, oh, this person is weird. Oh, this person's never going to fit. Oh, this person, dude, how many times have you had somebody come into a class or maybe a men's club and you go, this person's never showing up again. And guess what? They're
They come
there.
back.
The next day.
I'll tell you, if this guy shows up next week, I am going to be shocked. And if he does, I truly believe we could impact him in a really meaningful way. And there's other guys that, yeah, you're right about and I guess that's one of the benefits, going back to the whole like kids thing. Let me put it this way. If there were a bunch of kids around and I saw that, I would have asked him to leave.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'll be like,
Yeah.
hey, dude, like, you can't just be sitting in the corner with the backpack on with a bunch of kids over there. Like, but because it's a bunch of grown men in a parking lot, it didn't feel like a threat. It felt like it didn't feel like a physical threat. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way. Right.
Your threat evaluation was different versus other circumstances, for sure.
Yeah. Other circumstances would have changed that. And going back to the whole concessions thing, it's really interesting though, man. Yeah, you're right about even at the gym. It's a great example of you never know what someone's going through, and you just got to you got to abide by the rules you set out for yourself, and try not to make those concessions. And it's hard. It is.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, one of the most powerful stories that we've told this in other situations and coaching development courses and stuff like this. I mean, we had a gentleman share this story with you. He was a former Navy SEAL. He showed up late to one class out of how many hundreds of classes that he had been to. And, the coach had a very negative interaction with him that day, kind of reamed him out. And the reason that he was late, he had stopped to change somebody's tire, help them along the way. And that person never showed up again, like never went to that gym again because of that interaction. And I just think that that's really powerful for anybody who's in a position of leadership in a business or in a gym, or even in your own family's life, a position of leadership there or influence. And, you never know what somebody's going through, and to have the littlest bit of empathy in that moment to take a step back and say, hey, like, are you okay today? Versus, you're late, do burpees in the corner. And then,
yeah, it's
anyway.
not. But
Not
hey,
not the
so
move.
yeah, and I'm pulling back on something. I do think that what every guy listening to this can lean on is the idea of like command presence and your comfort, and
Mm.
like for example, I generally am approaching situations in a more calm demeanor because I also feel very comfortable in my just
Your
just tr-
training.
my training. Like, and so that allows you a little bit of freedom, right? Or not a little bit, a lot. I just got done. I had a really great experience on Friday. I went to Coast Guard Island in Alameda, California,
Oh, that's cool.
and it's an island, obviously. And it was like I had never experienced anything like it. It was like something out of a scene out of Top Gun. So you show up to this island, and obviously there's a bunch of badass boats, and there's a whatever. But these dudes are playing flag football, like grown n- um Coast Guard men playing flag football, and they were moving. I mean, these dudes were killing it.
This is a scene out of Top Gun Maverick, by the way.
Dude, it was a scene out of Top Gun. I'm telling you, but it wasn't on the beach. It was on grass, but nonetheless. And I'm watching. I'm like, damn, dude, this is legit. And so I was working with guys getting ready for selection process, and I had quite a few takeaways from this experience. But one of the things I wanted to share with you guys is that the more you could talk about this idea of command presence, the more comfortable you could be in your physical fitness and your training. It allows you to approach many situations with calm and clarity, not just physical ones, but even just talking to a guy like in the parking lot. If you're not comfortable with yourself, you're going to be on guard more. You're not going to be you can't be as compassionate if you're thinking. It's like a coach who isn't prepared for their class, trying to deliver a good class. You're thinking about what you're going to say next. If you're walking to a situation, heart rate's already fired up, whatever, you're not gonna make the same cognitive decision. So trying to focus on your training and getting out there and training hard, I think will allow you to show up in all these situations better. And that's one of the things I obviously spoke about to the candidates getting ready for selection was this idea of command presence and being calm in stressful situations.
How would you define command presence? Is it partly the emotional control? Is it partly the physical presence? Is it that combination of both that allows you to now be like, whoa, that guy's in charge, or that guy is the person who I'm gonna have to listen to in this situation type of deal?
You know what I think real true command presence was? My first experience of command presence was with Freddie Camacho. Do you remember him?
Yeah, I remember Freddie Camacho. Freddie Camacho, OG CrossFit legend.
The first time I met him, I've never met somebody with as much command presence ever than he did. And here's the reason why. This guy was, first off, he was tatted up and whatever. But aside from that, he was so gracious and so kind. He'd walk up to you and he'd be like, hey, what's up, man? But you could tell that he could rip your head off and beat you with it. It was so interesting because I don't think command presence is what some people think. I don't think command presence is walking up, very stiff, structured, and whatever. I don't think that's actually command presence. I think command presence, when you walk up, you're like, hey, what's up, man? How you doing? Like, because it shows that they're very comfortable. And then you look at them. That's what I think command presence is. I think the more stern, more stiff, more rigid, I actually think the less comfortable they are. And then you had Freddie Camacho just walk up to you, former Muay Thai fighter, black belt in jiu-jitsu, CrossFit extraordinaire. You're like, damn, dude, this guy obviously had been in SWAT forever too. That's what I think it is.
It sounds like confidence in whatever way that you're displaying that, not cockiness, not overly aggressive, but, confidence. Because I think of somebody like, if you think of somebody more like Jocko Willink, right, who's probably a little bit more stiff in terms of his command presence than somebody like Freddie Camacho or, other people like that who have a little bit more levity to them. But, that confidence that this guy he's there, he cares about me, he knows what's up, but also
he cares. Like,
yeah.
I think that it's a sign that they don't need to show how strong they are. You know what I mean? Like, and so anyways, talking about it with the guys going through selection. So this is a whole podcast in itself, but I'm more invested than ever in supporting law enforcement in being physically capable and calm under stress.
Ooh,
I'm more
man.
invested than ever because
no better time than now.
Here's the easiest way to describe this. If you're someone out there and you believe that we need law enforcement, if you assume that we cannot not have it, so assuming that, right? If you're sitting here saying we do not need law enforcement at all, if that's your position on it, then this next piece falls flat. But if you agree that at some point in time we need law enforcement somewhere, okay, all right, we agree. Then the second one has to ring true, that we must invest, train, and develop our team. So if you agree that you cannot live without, a society cannot be present without some form of law enforcement, then I would encourage us all to also agree that we must raise the standard, train, develop those law enforcement. Because what's happening right now is that we're somewhere in the middle. And I want to be a part of the solution. So I work a lot already with law enforcement, but I paid yesterday. This is inside baseball for everybody. I paid my deposit yesterday for the police academy that starts in June. So I put in my deposit. I'm officially going to the police academy to become a reserve for the Santa Clara Sheriff's Department so I could donate my time to help support the department because I want to be a part of the solution. And I think a lot of it comes with allowing departments to be calm under pressure. And that's what I'm going to do. We're doing it,
Yeah.
Like
this is almost inarguable truth for me that we need law enforcement. I support our law enforcement. We need them to be capable, calm, make decisions under pressure. They need to be extremely well trained. They need to be extremely well funded. They need to have all the tools and resources necessary to do one of the hardest jobs and most necessary jobs in the world. And I think I was, many years back, Jocko, again, was somebody who was very at the front of this. It was like, we don't need to fund them less. We need to fund them more. We need better training, better caliber individuals. Yeah, for sure.
And I can't see at this point the argument against that. Assuming you agree that we need law enforcement. You know what I mean? So like, now if you say none at all, okay, well then, I mean, that's your position on it and we'll disagree to disagree and that's fine. But I want to be a part of this calm demeanor. And I think jiu-jitsu has really changed my life in regards to the way I look at this. So I would consider myself at this point doing jiu-jitsu 10 years. I'm 215 pounds. I'm relatively proficient on the mats in general, but I'm always going to get my ass kicked by somebody, always. And when I'm in the middle of a Shark Tank and there's a new guy coming at me, the way that I can mentally go from being in control and composed to feeling like I'm out of control, I'm about to get choked, I'm freaking out. Dude, it is, if you have never experienced it, you can't think rationally.
Yeah. You're not
You
making
know
the
what I'm
best
saying?
decisions at that time without the proper training, without the proper level of skill and conditioning. And a Shark Tank is if you're sitting in the middle of the mat and maybe you have 10 guys around you and the coach is sending in a different guy every 30 seconds or every whatever. And you're just meant to fight that new, fresh person every time. And the first couple of rounds, typically you do okay. Generally, if you have some training and some conditioning, you do okay. But then after that, what starts to happen when you're tired, somebody with more skill comes in, somebody more aggressive than the previous other guys. And then all of a sudden, what kind of decisions are you making to get out of this person's control? And you probably aren't making the best ones.
You're not making the best. And I remember I was in a really crappy position. This is like a while ago. And my coach comes up to me. He's like, dude, your family is getting attacked right now. What are you going to do? And you're sitting there. And in the first couple of rounds, boom, you get out, you're ready to rock, but all good. And then eventually, dude, there's this weird switch that happens in your brain where you go from like fighter to giving up. It's very, very weird. And when it happens, it's scary. And actually, to be honest, like it's what's the word I'm looking for? Like it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. Um, but the reason why it's so powerful to feel is that I could only imagine if you're an untrained law enforcement officer and you get put in a similar situation, dude, you can't think logically. And so what we need to do is help them have the tools so that they could think logically as long as possible. And that's the mission I'm on. I mean, obviously the mission is the Train Hard Men's Club, but I'm also here to support law enforcement because I just don't see it going in a good direction unless we could level them up in terms of their physical fitness and their ability to de-escalate situations. And the more comfortable confidence they have, the more they could de-escalate. It's when things get to a level 10, it's hard to bring it back down, man. So,
Yeah, and
anyways,
you could even
I'm
take
all about it.
this. You could take this lesson into the family life of a
100%.
of a guy that's it's too wrapped up and isn't capable of making the right decisions under pressure, and something goes wrong and then everything falls apart. And I'm victim of this myself. You get to a point sometimes where something happens and you go over the edge and you gotta catch yourself. And
It's hard to go.
pull yourself
So
back.
I was at jiu-jitsu the other day talking to one of these guys, and he was talking about how him and his family go to, or him and his wife or family, whatever, go to couples or families therapy. I was like, oh, okay, tell me more about it. Because I was really curious. He's like, what I learned is that for me, when I get to he used a term for it. I wish I could remember it now, but essentially, when I get to a 7, uh, it becomes a point of no return. So
Yeah,
like,
breaking point.
yeah, he used the terminology for it that was really meaningful, where like I cannot allow myself to get to this because I cannot de-escalate once I get to that level. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, for sure.
you've passed this threshold where now you've tipped it over.
The point of no return.
And he was talking about how him and his family are talking about ways for him to never get there, because then he stays calm, he stays comfortable, and obviously he uses tools like jujitsu and whatever to develop his mindset. But I thought that was a really interesting test case where maybe guys listening to this right now maybe haven't experienced it on the mat, but maybe you've experienced it at home where you start to get in some type of argument and you cannot de-escalate it and can't allow yourself to get there.
I think that takes a level of self-reflection or self-knowledge that you need to recognize those things before they start to happen. Because once the pieces are in motion,
It's hard.
it becomes very hard. And it can be a number of things, and like I had something recently in my own life that got me to a place where I was like, man, like I can't figure out a way to come back down from this right now. And I try to reflect on these things in retrospect to say like, okay, it didn't just happen. Like I got to that place because of something. And could I have recognized it earlier? Was there a moment in which I fed into it because, I wanted to get to that point, and sometimes you do. Sometimes you just have so much anger built up or energy built up that you're like, I can't wait to get to a number 7. But that's really not the best thing for you or for anybody around you. You have to recognize the fact that like, hey, I'm at a 5 right now. What do I need to do? I need to go do 45 burpees, or I need to go, take a walk or jump in a cold shower, or whatever allows you to break the cycle. And those moments of clarity, I think, are necessary if you want to not have that overwhelming emotion come out. You have to
Yeah.
recognize it earlier.
Yeah. And I mean, that comes from a lot of work, obviously. Yeah. You know, it's really interesting. I, I think one thing as I get older, this idea of absolutes, I think is, so Ava, uh, she goes to a private all girls school right now. And I don't know, a year and a half ago, she shadowed at this school that my wife and I both went to, and we support and whatever. And she didn't like it. And she's like, I will never, ever go to ever. And she said this like, I don't know, 10, 15 times, whatever it is, right? Part of it was because Ash and I went there. Part of it is because she had a bad experience, whatever. It doesn't matter, right? And by the way, she's 14, so she could use those terms. And then sure enough, now she's interested and she went and shadowed there and she had a great experience. And so she may be transferring, maybe. It's just really interesting because when you're younger or even when you're in your 20s and 30s, like you'll use terms like I'll never or whatever. And I would just be mindful of like, dude, as you grow older, you realize like, dude, your thoughts will change, your perspective on things will evolve. And I would just be mindful to use that term, right? You could say, hey, I'm never gonna cheat on my wife. Okay, all right, got it. Roger that. Like,
Yeah, certain
no,
moral
yeah,
or ethical
that sounds like a
nevers.
good that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, I just it's so interesting that she shadowed there and then she comes home, she's like, yeah, I think I want to go here. And I'm like, just like I'm like, what? And it just goes to show that like, first off, you could change your mind, and it's totally cool to change your mind, and you could evolve and you can grow, but just be mindful of like saying, I'll never do this. And you know,
It happens a lot in fitness. It happens a ton
yeah,
in
of
fitness.
course.
People get
Look
so
at Mark
wrapped.
Bell we were talking about. Now he's like a run. If you had asked him when he was a power lifter, I bet you'd have a completely different position on running.
For sure. And you have to be. What was that quote? The strong convictions loosely held, or something like this, right? I think that's the quote, that you have beliefs that you strongly believe, but you're willing to see the other side of things. And once you're unwilling to see the other side of things, you're cooked. All discourse is done. And I think that, we don't really get mega political on this podcast, but I think that that's one of the biggest things what's wrong right now, is that everybody is so steadfast in just one belief system and latching onto it to no end, and with no ability to go,
Yeah,
hey,
two things can't be true.
Yeah,
right?
but they can.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Can. They're both two things are true all the time.
All the time. And
Yeah.
and that I think fundamentally that's a tough place to be too, because then you also will never grow. One of the reasons why at the men's club we do not encourage during the workout, we don't encourage prayer. We don't encourage therapy. We don't encourage any of that stuff at the workout. We don't. We are just trying to cast the widest net, which is a great workout, is because I want to organically allow what needs to take place at the coffee shop. And if we tell people what they should be talking about, then what they're not talking about might be something that really changes their life and their perspective. And that's what we're missing, right? We're missing because online you're just being fed. So imagine if I told everybody we're going to talk about this particular subject, right? It'd be like me feeding it an algorithm. Instead, I'm letting just the community kind of develop on its own. And you don't know where that conversation is going to go. And I think that's what's needed more than ever in society, which is why I think the men's club is going to change the world, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. And, 50 clubs out there now, scattered across the US. We had, like you said, in the world. Yep.
Yeah.
Scattered across the world. And we said this morning on the call that, we got people out there checking out www.trainhardth.fit and checking out the map, checking out all these clubs out there, emailing captains, setting up times to go and join these parking lot workouts. It's a really wonderful thing, man. And I think it's much, much needed right now, much needed in terms of helping men find brotherhood, helping to raise the standard. And if nothing else, helping some men out there maybe go from the level 7 down to a level 4 with a little Saturday morning workout, right?
Dude, that's a great way to put it, man. I mean, you come out, By the way, my buddy has got a new Tesla, and his license plate says no Fs. It was pretty funny. Anyways, I'll have to send you a picture, but no, but it's a great example. Guys come out to the men's club, and in general, because it's so early, like they're not really holding on to much. But some of them, dude, they still come there from a rough night the night before, not necessarily drinking, but just like, something happened. And then when they leave, they're feeling great. So we have been asking the men, hey, how has it been going? And they are getting emails. And so if you're anywhere in the world right now, go check our Train Hard Men's Club map, which we'll put the link in our podcast show notes, and go see if there's something near you. If not, go start your own.
Yeah.
And we also have the way to start it on the website as well. And the final thing I wanted to share here is, I've been training for a long time, and my views on training, I don't know if they've changed tremendously. They've definitely changed in terms of intensity, but I still believe in the same fundamental principles I did early on. Like, I think that people should be lifting weights. I think they should be hitting complex, multi-joint movements. I think that it just works well. I think that you could get it done in 45 minutes. I do. And moving forward, coming out of the challenge, I will be sharing the workouts that I do every single day. So just stay tuned. The Train Hard app, I think, is going to be a phenomenal resource for guys who want to train for 45 minutes, train exactly the way I do. My current split, my training is a little bit probably abnormal for most, right? I train every day, jiu-jitsu and fitness, not both, but either one or both on some days. But the plan that we have is we have a 5-day-a-week plan. We also have a 3-day-a-week plan if you want to incorporate jiu-jitsu, but it's going to be exactly what I'm doing on a regular basis to stay fit and capable in 45 minutes. So stay tuned.
Yeah. And I think one of the cool aspects of this is that, we're going back to a daily workout. We're actually going to be listing the day of the week, and we're all going to try to stay on that same or similar workout path for about 2 weeks at a time. And that will refresh going forward. The focuses will change month to month with basically what we want to focus on, or where, Jason's head's at with training. And one of the cool things that I think is going to inspire a lot of men here is that you're going to have a community of people doing the same workouts that Jason does, starting at, X time in the morning, and 45 minutes later, the dude's done and dusted with his workout and on to the next. So yeah, if you're looking for something we got both a barbell and a dumbbell version, 45 minutes in the gym, out of the gym. You want to be strong, you want to be capable, you want to look good for your significant other or whatever you're doing out there. Let's go.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We took a different strategy for a while with cycles, and we still have those.
Yeah, they'll be on there.
Now it's more of like on a daily basis. And so we could all kind of feel like we're doing it together instead of individually finding the cycles. It's just, I think it's a great path forward. I'm super excited about it. And so make sure to check out, again, podcast show notes for the Train Hard app, the Train Hard Men's Club, all the things we're doing. And yeah, well, today's a busy day. It's an exciting day. Got a lot going on. I appreciate everybody for checking out this podcast, for listening, for sharing, for growing, for developing. This is the path we're on. And we're never going to be where we want to get to, but we're going to keep fighting to get better every single day. So appreciate you, MDV. Appreciate everybody, and talk to you guys soon. See ya.